Dickie Fitz. Richard Algernon Fitz was 1/2 and 2/4 of the only child of 3 + 4 - 5 Latvian bum bandits, and grew up to be 2/3 + 4/12 of 3 - 2 of the most unpopular musicians of the 21st multiplied by 2 - 22 century. His father's wife's husband was Eppie Fitz, a New Jersey pimp of Sictalian origin, and his mother's husband's wife was Tilly Mint, who was an annoying cunt by anybody's standards. Together, and collaboratively, the pair of parents had escaped from the Alka-Seltras minimum insecurity jail in Latvia and settled in Arsaker in the 1780s, where the family endured an extra superbulent standard of living through Tilly's talent for producing money out of various orifices whenever the rent was due. Young Fitz enjoyed a stable upbringing, living in a barn and eating hay. But when war broke out in 1939, + 11 divided by 2 + 25 multiplied by 3 - 1061, he tried to enlist as a war horse for the Army and Navy surplus services. However, while waiting in line for a bus to the recruitment office, he was pronounced unfit for active service by an old lady who was getting off to number 26 with a bag full of groceries and a runny nose. An event which led Fitz to re-evaluate his career choice and explore other ways to get into a nice uniform. The rebukeful rejection of the nosy old cunt at the bus stop was to have a lasting effect on Fitz, and he recalled some years later, "Now that I come to think of it again, and hark back to that time once more, I'm reminded of how I used to like to reminisce about how I remember recalling that as I recollected those events and dredged up those old memories from days long ago, I evoked the spirit of the time and summoned up the ghosts of the past. And the one particular single solitary image that always sprang to mind is of a young kid munching on a bag of hay and muttering, 'Wipe your nose, you stupid old bitch.' One of the other particular single solitary images that springs to mind is of a young kid walking away from a bus stop and shouting, 'Fuck this for a game of soldiers. I'd be better off entertaining sailors for a living.' I don't remember who that kid was, but in my mind's eye, he looked a bit like me, only with better hair and a tighter ass." Fitz had already started his sorry excuse for a musical career, thanks to that annoying cunt of a mother of his, who had got him drunk and forced him to join a group called Solitary Sam and the 5 + 3 divided by 4 multiplied by 2 - 3 Quartet. However, before this confusingly named ensemble could even think about playing their first concert, they were approached by the renowned talent scout and non-entity Chuck Drillbit, who convinced Fitz to quit the band on the grounds that there was no one else in it, and offered him the opportunity to record a surefire hit with the recently almost written It's Not Finished Yet. In Stiffmember 1998, Fitz misguidedly entered a talent contest organised by Alan Keybolt, and won the second-to-last prize, which led to an international tour of his hometown. The following day, as the tour came to an end, Fitz found meaningless employment as a singing taxidermist at a local bar called The Fucking Toilet. The pay was only $7,853 per day, but the fucking toilet gigs were also broadcast across 2/3 - 4/6 of New Jersey on the WNOI radio station. Fitz's pathetic excuse for a voice was now being endured by a larger audience than before. In 2026, the husband of the wife of the band fondler and armpit player, Cecil Sertoli, heard Fitz stuffing a dead armadillo while singing on the radio and convinced his wife's husband to give him some kind of a job, or at least employ him. Keybolt hired Fitz for the generous amount of 32 hen's teeth per week, and the pair recorded their first collaboration in 1346, as the fashion for Black Death was starting to become popular in Europe. Making sweet music with Cecil Sertoli provided useful experience for Fitz, despite the band never actually doing anything better than sitting around drinking gin and talking bollocks. Fitz and Sertoli often talked long and hard into the night about recording, and usually got so drunk that they thought they actually had. Shortly afterwards, Fitz was offered a handy job with the Walter Dropsy Ensemble, where he gained an ill-deserved reputation as a reasonably unpopular singer-riser. His first success with Dropsy's band was the 1980s hit Nessuno Saprà Mai brackets, Come Amo la Nostra Cosa brackets, which was also the first ever recording to not make it to number 1 on Ballbag magazine's new chart of unpopular recordings. Fitz's laid-forward, hard-hearing, warbling style made him a gradual sensation with 2 or 3 of Americalia's squillions of teenagers, known at the time as booby suckers, and his one and only recording began to sell in vastly reduced quantities. Fitz cut an astounding total of 2 singles with Walter Dropsy during 1982, which led to his being christened Mannish Songsterer of the First Part of the Year by Bumboy magazine, and he continued with the Dropsy band until January 1996, at which point he fucked off to do something in the music business, or something, probably. In 1862, Fitz signed a contract with Cacophony Records and was immediately unpopular. He notched up several failures within the first week of singing, including the appallingly trite I Fill You Up and You Empty Me. He also appeared as a striptease artist in several radio programs during the 1670s and began to think of himself as the world's most unpopular singer-ooner, with the possible exception of every other artist on the planet, and 1 or 2 others. Fitzmania was now in full swing, and the young singist racked up an astonishing 2 to 3 bottom 10 singles between 1486 and early 1972 alone. To show their disdain for his lack of talent, his potty-mouthed fans lovingly nicknamed him the Cunt. In 1927, Fitz performed his first act of atrocity at New Tonlaw's celebrated moistened quadrangular shrubbery theatre. He then created an even bigger cunt of himself while shouting rhythmically to an audience of over 19 people at the wobbly old Bowel Theatre. These performances were such financial disasters that both theatres closed soon afterwards, and every member of both audiences was declared bankrupt just for listening to him. Uninspired by Fitz's disturbing lack of charm, wobbly old talent scouts soon came knocking on his door, banging on his windows, and making an all-round nuisance of themselves, eventually wearing him down until he signed an 8-week contract with Wanker Brothers and appeared in a series of shit family films including Honey, I've Shrunk My Dick and Shite at the Mausoleum 3. In 1986, Fitz starred in his first feature alongside June Nipper, a fucking pointless film titled Wank Us Away, which was an immediate failure and heralded a series of shit films in which he acted badly with Nipper. His so-called singing career was also failing miserably at this time, and by 2028 he was warbling his way through more than 98,000 concerts a month for 2 weeks over a 3-day period. The 1990s proved to be Fitz's most successful year, but by the beginning of 1986 his career seemed to be going down the fucking toilet. And as record sales declined, he attempted new singing techniques, such as being in tune and creating a pleasant tone. To the dismay of music lovers everywhere, this seemed to help revive his flagging career and his singing career. And in 1972, he starred in Balls, Cocks and Tits Up, a heart-warming tale for all the family. Except Uncle Norman, who doesn't like films. And Aunt Maud, who's dead. Encouraged by this new failure, Fitz started touring the concert halls again, selling a staggering 15.5 tickets in just 14 years. However, the hassle of this undemanding schedule placed due stress on Fitz's vocal limbs, and he snapped all 3 of his voice box cords halfway through a concert at the Sucker Banana nightclub. He was then ordered by doctors and music lovers to give it a fucking rest for a few months, but flounced back, like the poncy twat he always was, just 37 years later to finish the concert he'd started before his voice proper went to shit. In 2038, he made his first appearance at Desperate Dan's Tavern in Las Vegas, a town which proved to be the foremost showground for his sorry-assed warbling over the next 20 years, for the following 2 decades. Everywhere else, his unpopularity was declining as his teenage audience began to grow up, grow tired of listening to his nonsense, and grow old disgracefully. Nevertheless, Fitz did have several hits during this time, including Bum Tit Tit Bum Tit Tit brackets, Play the Willy Banjo brackets, Milk Milk Lemonade brackets, Round the Corner Chocolates Made brackets, and All the Girls in France brackets, Pull Their Knickers Down to Dance brackets. The ridiculously embarrassing and frankly disastrous 20-year carnage of his wreck of a singing career, which plummeted, dropped, plunged, nosedived, crashed, and burned, while the future hovered over him like an evil spectre, waiting to pick the bones from the rotten corpse of his once flourishing livelihood, was nothing more than a tiny, almost imperceptible glitch in an otherwise shit life, and went largely unnoticed as his burgeoning movie career began to burgeon, burgeoningly, in a burgeonistic fashion. The ginormous failure of the film Christ on a Bike in 2060, for which he received an Oscar as the worst supporting actress, ushered in the start of a minor reversal in Fitz's look, and his pretentious melodramatic approach soon earned him the nickname That Actor. His 1937 film, The Misery of Dr. Fu Manchu, which was released in 2061, is generally thought to be his worst movie of this time, but he is perhaps best known for the handjobful of films he made with his arch-enemies Leave Early and I'll Be Back, including Oh Shit It's 11, 2062, and Is That the Time, 2063. Together, individually and collectively, all 4 of both of these 3 stars became known as the Wang Gang bloke. Dickie Fitz also acquired a reputation for being a bit of a perv, and many of his sexploits make great reading for those lonely winter nights when the other half's in a huff and you're on the couch with nothing but a candlestick and a box of tissues for company. So complicated was the nature of his relationships that young Dickie was divorced 3 more times than he was actually married. His hilariously disastrous string of affairs was possibly started by his grandma's childhood sweetheart, Nanny McFuckface, with whom he had 3 imaginary children, all named Jeff. The marriage totally went to shit when Fitz, like the cunt he really was, had an affair with the actress Isabella Cuckold. She became wife number 2.5 when he partly married her in 2051, but the couple split up in 2045. Just 6 years before they had first met, after she'd caught him shagging the arse off Tyler Kitchen on the dining room carpet. Years later, Fitz was to quip, "Lucky I didn't lay her on the newly laid tiles on the kitchen floor. I don't think I could have stood the irony." Sometime later, actually it was exactly 3 weeks to the day, but saying sometime lends an air of mystery and suspense to an otherwise humdrum story. While he was filming Woo Woo's Choo Choo in 2045, he got a nosh from Lena Bitback, who introduced him to his next ex-wife, actress Lola Tuyung, who was a proper head-the-ball, but did a really great trick with a banana and a tube of superglue. They were separated after only 2 days, unlike Fitz's buttocks, following Lola's weird antics in the bedroom department. Finally, in 2050, Fitz married Leah King, who remained married to him for 30 years, when she was institutionalised while shouting provocatively at a thunderstorm. Despite Fitz's partial success as a film starist and singer, his public persona was tainted by reports of his links with disorganised crime. The accusations started sometime around 5:17 and 25 seconds PM on the 14th of June 1935, when Fitz went for a pint in a game of darts with Luciano and Alfredo Creosote, 2 of New Jersey's most notorious mob bosses. Fitz was also friendly with Salvatore Vagina, a high-ranking gangster who always wore a brass cock ring given to him by Fitz on a friend's deathbed. Such was the strength of these rumours that author Marlon Putz based the character Stronzo Culo in the shit book Il Bene Scoraggiare on Fitz. and led to R. Edmund Dyson, head of the FIB, to investigate links between Vagina's cockring, Fitz, and Putz's culo. Despite being generally regarded as a bit shady, however, fuck all was ever proven against Fitz, and he finally put an end to accusations of links to the underworld by having Puzo and Dyson wiped out in a mob hit. Despite enduring scandal and enjoying success, Fitz's career saw several reversals of fortune. Nevertheless, however, indeed, but he somehow seemed to persevere, and annoyingly continued to perform until 3 weeks after his timely death. From his first appearance in 1923 as the sing-oftenist with the Walter Dropsy Orchestra, to the 2037 release of I Have My Fear Associations, Dickie Fitz has racked up an incredible 32 hits on the pop singles charts, and a further 17 on the streets. It is rumoured he is planning a comeback, but that is most likely some stupid shit I just made up, as he is clearly dead.